All right, hello friends. This is Adam and Hingo at PAX South 2017, and today we have a very special guest. Holly Rothrock is a 2D artist with Giant Sparrow, and you're wondering who is Giant Sparrow? Giant Sparrow is the developer behind the What Remains of Edith Finch game, and she has agreed to spend some time with us today. Hello, Holly.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It is an absolute pleasure. For people who aren't quite familiar with your game yet, can we just give like a quick overview of what the game is
Yeah,
about?
sure. So Edith Finch, What Remains of Edith Finch is a first-person action adventure exploration game where you play as Edith Finch and you're returning to this house that you grew up in. But when you were little, all the rooms were locked because when a family member died, your grandmother would lock all the doors and seal it up and preserve it like a museum. So you move away and it's been abandoned for a few years. So when you play the game, you're coming back to this house and you're entering these rooms that you've only seen through peepholes before. And every time you enter a room, you get kind of sucked into this memory where you replay their last moments. And through these memories, you're uncovering your own family history and figuring out the difference between fact and fiction and kind of what that means as a finch, as being one of the last finches alive.
And it's a very, I mean, it's a very beautifully illustrated design game, and it
Oh,
has some
thank you.
very, and it has some very iconic elements. Is there specific elements that you focused on for taking out of the game and putting in your pin design?
I mean, there were a few different ideas that we played with. Obviously, the house is like the biggest symbol that we wanted to showcase, but also in regards to the color, I really wanted to go with something that was moody and indicative of our game. It takes place actually in Washington State, so we always have those like green and blue, gray clouds, very overcast, like it's always about to rain. Um,
And the house you refer to, where would they? What does that look like? It's kind of unique.
Oh yeah, for nobody who has seen the house before, I think it was based off of a few different houses. One of those is like can't remember what it's called, like the Winchester house
Is
or
it the crazy house where it has like the weird doors that
yeah,
go under?
yeah,
Yeah.
and it just has room after room built on top of it, and that's kind of the feel that they wanted for the Finch house because um, people can't live in these rooms that have been sealed up, so they need to build new rooms. So it was really fun. Like, I didn't do the original design for the house, but it's been really fun to try to incorporate that design sense into all the other art we've been doing.
So, if you wouldn't mind, would you walk us through sort of how you came from your concept sketches
Hmm.
to the finished pin itself?
Of course. Well, I got the task like any other task that is given to me at my job. They tell me, hey, we need this, make this. So I said, okay, what are the specs? They sent me over. Penny Arcade is really good about sending over, templates, and they send me designs of the past pins that have been made so I can reference them. And so I went about taking the templates they gave me and just throwing colors on top of them because you get to design the pin and the backing too, and so we threw out a few different concepts of the house, and then we had an early concept of the finch, and there was a crazy one where I was trying to do the house and I didn't realize it, but I put the house in the house. uh, I just got really house crazy. I kind of wanted to do one for a while with the forest, silhouettes of the trees. But we actually thought we were going to do the house really early on, just a silhouette of the top of the house and the garden in front of it that you walk up to in the very beginning of the game. That went through a lot of iterations, actually. There was a colored version and there was a black and white version. My art director, Brandon Martinowitz, he really liked the idea of a black silhouette and then all the details were metal, and I was on board with that. And after two or three iterations, we're like, someone's gonna stab themselves on this tower. It's way too pointy. and the details were really tiny. So we didn't know. We knew roughly how big the pin was going to be, but I wasn't really exposed to pins in the pin culture before, so I had no idea what to expect. So we're like, let's go back to the drawing board, and actually it came together after maybe 3 days, and I came up with this Finch concept, which is based on a screen, or not a screen door, a stained glass window on the front of the Finch door, which no one really pays attention to that much in the game, and so I was hoping to highlight that Finch silhouette. And when we showed the rest of the team a bunch of the designs, everyone looked at that one and they're like, that's got to be it. We got to go with that one.
That's very cool.
Sorry for rambling.
No, it's absolutely fine. It's not even rambling. This is very descriptive.
Yeah, we've had zero input into what it's like for a third-party designer to go through and create a pin.
Oh, yeah?
You are the first.
Well,
No pressure.
it was a good experience.
You're new to pins, and so I imagine you're also kind of new to the medium of pins, right? Sculpting with metal and like a limited, cost-limited palette.
I've
and
never
space.
made pins before. I mean, in art college, they taught me what Pantones were kind of, but yeah, I collected some TwitchCon pins this past year, and that's as much of the pin craze I've been in.
So did you make any specific allowances for, like, because it's difficult to kind of design for that size, right? If you're inch and a quarter, inch and a half, and you don't want too much metal because then it starts looking like a mirror. You have to get that balance.
I don't know. I personally really like the metal.
Oh, you do?
So I would have a lot of metal if it were my pin.
Oh, okay.
But I did, always draw to the size it was going to be. Well, I always zoomed out and saw what it would look like in its final state. And also, they were really nice at Penny Arcade and sent me like a PSD file with all the layers of like, this is your metal layer and this is your color layer. And I tried to key my like metal band thickness to the guides they sent me, so it would be as close to like a nice official looking pin as it could be.
So, just speaking to this weekend, I imagine a lot of the pin fans have come up and spoken to you over the past couple of days. How would you describe these interactions with that community?
Great and embarrassing.
Embarrassing?
Yeah, well, like I was telling you earlier, I didn't ever think I'd be talking to anyone about the pins ever. It was like a normal task for me at work, and I made it, and like they've asked me to do a bunch of other promo stuff, and they just say, we need it by ASAP, and I say, okay, and then I try to make time in my workday to do it, and I do it, and then it's done, and I forget about it.
Yeah, it's definitely a very dedicated community for these kind of things, and they're very...
Yeah, it was overwhelming. It's been really nice, but also very embarrassing.
Now that you have actually designed and produced a pin, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice before starting out, what do you think that would be?
Maybe, I don't know, this is really technical, but working in vectors, there's like a little divot on the end of his tail, which I guess is nice so you don't stab yourself with the end of the tail, and it's kind of in the original Finch, but like, I guess the curves are important to like a rounded pin like this, so I think I would shape it a little bit more nicely, like some of the other like nice round pins, or maybe, I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing that I had that limited research sample that Penny Arcade had given me. Like,
oh, so if you had had more reference designs, you think maybe something...
Yeah, I don't know if it was good. Like, if having that small sample made the pin more unique, or if it was good. Is it good that it's more unique, or should it have been keyed closer to like the collection for the year? You know?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I think what makes it really stand out actually at this show is how unique it is.
Because I just designed in a void.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's for the pins at the show. It wasn't too many at the show, but it's definitely probably the top one for the weekend.
It's very nice of you guys to say. Wait, I've
So,
seen this one.
yeah, so in front of you we have 4 pins. We have the Automata Kickstarter add-on pin, and it's actually a double layer, so his face is a separate
That's
layer.
so cool, yeah.
And then the Thimbleweed Park pin, which is previously one of Adam's favorite pins from a previous PAX, where the pin tells a story. It's not just a piece of metal.
Oh, yeah,
it's
yeah.
more in line of this is art and here is why. And then based on what you said about metal and how you love metal, this is the two of the most metal-y looking pins I have, where it's the Texas LE from 2015 and then the Naughty Dog 30 year. The main issue that we have as collectors with the metal type pins is depending on where the metal is, it's a fingerprint magnet. So for this, you can see there's fingerprints out on the edges. I'm not grabbing this pin in the middle of it, so that's going to remain intact, not have a shiny surface that is going to show where my oily, dirty hands from being in PAX all day.
It also seems like it's a fine scratches end up showing up a lot more. I see.
And there are some brushed metal finishes that happen, but I don't think we've ever seen a combination of brushed metal and something else, because I don't know that they can do that. So it's just something to keep in mind from that perspective. But like out of these 4 pins, well, we can just take the shiny ones out of the way. So just from a design perspective, what are your viewpoints on those pins?
Oh my god, well, I love them both, actually. Like, I never would have thought, like, having the double layer, was I allowed to do that? I have no idea.
Probably, but there are so few out there. I don't know if anyone outside of Penny Arcade has done that.
I mean, it literally adds another dimension to the pin. But I mean, what did you say, tumbleweed?
Thimbleweed Park.
Thimbleweed Park. Oh, I always forget the name, but the colors are beautiful on this, and they made good use of the the color on color thing that you can do instead of separating all your colors by metal, which I kind of wanted to do more with the Finch pin, but it's getting so small that I wasn't sure we'd be able to do options like that. They nailed it though.
So it's just different ideas, because I know that part of what we've heard before that Penny Arcade has sent out their packet of here's previous pins, but a big part of that is we see the image files as well, and what you see in a PNG file doesn't necessarily translate to how it looks in metal.
Oh, definitely
not.
So
we're trying to also give you a different viewpoint on that too, because seeing them in person is definitely something that makes it a lot better. And one of the things that when we first saw the pin quest for the Edith Finch pin was, this pin looks great, I really want to see how it looks in real life, because we don't know how that's going to translate to the physical medium. And as pin collectors, it's something that some of us discuss, but we have no idea, because we're not designers in any way, shape, or form. And we're genuinely curious what people like you can do with that medium, because it is very limited and restricted.
Actually, one thing I think that helped was actually one of the Penny Arcade guys swung by our booth, and we were talking a little bit about the pin process, and he said some people, when they send in their pins, don't send the Pantone number for the color, and I think that really affects the end product, because, well, I saw it in the template, so I was like, I guess I gotta do the Pantone colors, so I did, and some of the colors didn't even exactly match the colors I wanted, so I had to go back and tweak colors very tediously so they get the effect that I wanted. But I can imagine, like, some people who just send it in without those numbers don't end up with pins exactly like how they wanted.
Yeah. So then, related to that, what was the most challenging part of designing a pin in this small, restrictive medium where you have limited color palette in terms of colors specifically and total number of colors?
Yeah.
And you're essentially designing a postage stamp.
I mean, the color limitations definitely were a challenge, especially for Edith Finch, because it's a very moody game with a lot of gradients and mist. So it really was me tediously sitting, picking color swatches, and like I had the colors that I originally wanted that were based on colors that I actually took from the game, and then tweaking them and seeing, like, they're like, I think we use 4 or 5 colors, and I'd have to step back and say, like, now that I have these 4, do they look too saturated or too desaturated? And then I think that comes from, though, being like a classically trained artist, and I did a lot of like painting and illustration, and so I would step back again and change one color, and then look again and say, is it too saturated or too desaturated? I had a real issue with the colors just all being beige for a while. We could have had a beige pin.
That would have been an amazing Scandinavian design aesthetic right there.
Yeah. So I think that was the biggest challenge, because like me personally, I haven't worked with Pantone in years, because I was only exposed to it working with t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to get the full range, I think I was given up to like a single digit number of colors, and so trying to work within that and take full advantage of that range, but also not getting too many that, you know, my postage stamp wasn't crazy colorful and still moody, and trying to pick the colors that would work together from that small sample. It was a challenge.
I completely believe that. And well, as we've said a ton of times throughout the show and today, you made an amazing pin. It is a great piece of art. It helps, like Thimbleweed Park, tell part of the story. When Adam and I were discussing the game earlier, I was telling him how I felt that just going through the 4-minute demo was, you had really great art assets that fit with the music, fit with the way the words pull into the game, and even the way the words dissipate, and how they're an anchored point in the air, and that whole centered viewpoint of ambiance and everything rolling together. It was a really nice wrapped up package of how the game is and how it works and how it makes you feel. And in terms of, I don't really want to do spoilers, so we can potentially cut this part out, but the Calvin storyline, when he's on the swing and he's swinging and you see there's sky in the distance, but the majority of what you see is your feet and the ground, and then you see a glimpse of the sky.
I painted that sky.
You get a glimpse of the sky, and then it's the trees, and then you just get that split second of sky, and then eventually when he comes off the swing, it's just this gorgeous sky, sun setting in the distance, and this haunting yet peaceful music that ties everything together.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily feel like you're panicking or afraid. You feel okay with what just happened, but partly because it is a memory. If it was more of a this is a real time thing, it probably would have shaken me to my core.
Oh, you'd be panicking. Yeah. Wow, that's a very good way to describe it, though. Haunting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the game is set in Washington, but the sort of the ghost stories really kind of feel more Japanese to me, or like
a folklore.
Yeah, like I forget what it's called, but like they have, it just felt like kind of those collections of like those ghost stories.
Yeah.
Does that was that a factor? I mean, is that part of the design where? Or am I just imagining things?
I don't think it was. I mean, I personally wasn't a big part of the narrative team, even though we're a small team, so I hear everything. I know that death was, it's a touchy subject for people to talk about, and especially to bring into so many people's homes in video game form. Not like shooting people on like a first-person shooter. It's like really confrontational death. I think what the people who wrote the narration for the game wanted to keep in mind was this idea of like a triumphant death. It's not like, it's not supposed to be overwhelmingly sad. Death is like a fact of life, and
so the storyline he was referring to when he got to fly, like that was what he achieved his dream essentially at that point.
Yeah, so it's sad because he died, but it's also a little bittersweet because he had a goal and he met that goal.
So you hear that, kids? Always pursue your goals no matter
Fly
what the
for your
consequences. So, Holly, thank you again for talking to us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and showing me all your pins.
Absolutely. And What Remains of Edith Finch is coming out, is still this first quarter?
Yes, in spring.
And on PS4 and Steam, correct?
Yes, PC.
And we're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
All right.